These people who chant death to America, try to assassinate President Trump twice, kill 241 of your Marines in Beirut.
Just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him.
Hey, it's me, and welcome to Trump Mafia. Now, it's pretty amazing that our FBI, even under new leadership with the hapless and feckless Kash Patel, can give us no answers about who was really behind the assassination attempts on President Trump. They, of course, explain away that these are lone gunmen, but they were on the phone, the both of them, the whole time, using encrypted phones, and they had superior intel. Now, at first, the FBI under Chris Wray tried to paint Thomas Crooks as being some kind of a genius, that, this was a Mensa type hippie that had knowledge about explosives, about drone technology, about location, scouting, sniping. I mean, this guy was like Rambo, right? Like an assassin, a professional assassin, the jackal, if you will, Thomas Crooks, right? And never mind that he was talking on the phone the whole time he was at Butler, and that he somehow was left crawling around on a roof, and that the FBI quickly cleansed the whole roof almost right away, which you never do with crime scenes. But for this event, they completely destroyed the crime scene, wiping it, and no DNA material. There was a problem with one of the cartridges that was not found. Then later it magically appeared. I mean, the whole story that you got from Chris Wray's FBI was full of holes. It was like a Swiss cheese explanation, a narrative. But what really stuck out was that he was a lone gunman and a genius. With Ryan Ruth, it was more difficult to explain away that he was on the phone the whole time, because this guy popped up in Ukraine, was buying weapons, and somehow this guy did not appear on the radar. Suddenly he's at a golf course trying to shoot President Trump. And it's only by chance that he was caught. But he was also a lone gunman. Now, if you have two lone gunmen, they're not lone, right? So on Fox News, just casually, the Prime Minister of Israel says that, it's Iran that did it through proxies and using their intel. So he's talking about their spooks, like the Iranian intel services, are behind it using proxies. Now, I'm not sure if he meant proxies being Thomas Crooks and Ryan Ruth, but there's no evidence at all of any contacts with Iranians. Now, it could be that they were on the phone with Iranian handlers or proxies of Iran that were orchestrating the whole thing and planning the whole thing. Now, we can just assume that Netanyahu is just saying that because he thinks, if you tell MAGA people that Iran tried to kill President Trump twice, they will all be in favor of the USA getting deeply involved in a war against Iran. Maybe that's why he's saying it. Maybe he doesn't have any intel at all, or maybe he has intel which points to Ukraine, because the fingerprints of Ukraine are all over these two lone gunmen, right? Ukrainian connections that really tell you something. You have BlackRock connections, you have Ukraine connections, but there's no Iranian connections that we know of. So it's kind of odd how this statement by Netanyahu kind of ignores all the Ukraine and BlackRock connections, and suddenly it's all about Iran. Coincidentally, just when Israel wants the USA to get deeply involved in the war to change the regime in Iran. You notice that it wasn't anymore about just taking out the nuclear threat. It's about changing the regime now. And so President Trump is stuck between a rock and a hard place because you're talking about the neocons. They will always survive no matter what the administration is. They're kind of like the cockroaches of the deep state, right? The neocons. They want regime change. And I understand that a lot of people feel like we're fighting Israel, wars for them, and why are we doing that? And Israel sucks, and I get all that. But I don't quite get how people that can't stand Israel suddenly become fans of Iran, and I support Russia because I feel they were provoked and Ukraine is a Nazi regime. I cannot support that. But usually out there, a lot of people are pro-Russia simply because Ukraine is on the Israel side and they hate Israel so much, then they just support Russia against Ukraine, which doesn't make sense to me. Like, I feel Israel is justified doing special operations, just like Russia is justified to do it. They were both provoked, and I know they also want to do it, and so good, right? I don't care if Iran gets bombed. I really don't care. But I do notice, though, that Israel is going after military targets, as well as the scientists that are involved in the nuclear weapons program, and not just bombing civilians, which is what Iran's doing. And that's because they don't have accurate weapons. They just have missiles, right? It's kind of primitive. Like, you attack their village and you shoot the leaders, right, with your muskets. And they throw a whole bunch of spears. Okay, great. So they do cause death, but it's not as effective as what Israel is doing. We're talking about surgical strikes, taking out key military leaders, and good for them, right? But all in all, I feel President Trump still has the Trump card, which is the peace card, where he still has a chance to kind of mediate a peace where it's not about regime change, but that it was all about taking out the nuclear capability of Iran. And believe you me, Russia did not want Iran to get nuclear weapons because it's a small club. If you're one of the nuclear powers, you don't want other countries to just start getting nuclear weapons, because if Iran gets it, Saudi Arabia is going to get it, and then the whole world suddenly has nukes, right? So it's a small club. So I think Russia is not against taking out the nuke capabilities, but of course Russia will be against regime change, and so am I. I mean, what are we doing, right? We've done that in the past. That has been a joke. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Iraq. Look even at Syria now. Now they have an Al-Qaeda leader. So the whole thing, the neocons, they've been allied with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS, with Hezbollah, Hamas, and then they claim to be very pro-Israel. But then you had all these Iranians being ushered into the Defense Department over the years, as well as Muslim Brotherhood people, mostly due because of the Choco regime, and that's been a disaster. So, anything these neocons touch, it just turns to SHIT. And so President Trump has to steer clear of these savages. You see him out there, even in the media. It really does seem Israel has a big influence on the media people. But, the usual suspects, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, the way they talk about what's happening or what should be done is not like from an American perspective. Their perspective is always an Israeli perspective, which is kind of odd because they claim to be American citizens. But you also see some of the other people, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, they're like Iran fanboys and fangirls, and that is hard to explain. But the problem for me is that Iran bombed Jerusalem. The rest, look, it's a war, right? People die. And honestly, I care about our country, not getting too involved. But Iran bombed Jerusalem. So I feel that's very offensive. I mean, did all these crusaders die in vain just to see Iran bomb Jerusalem? They have obviously shown that it's not just about Israel or Jews. They're against Christians. And they want to hurt us. So F them. F Iran. But still, I don't really support regime change. I do feel there should be some kind of a balance. You know what happens when the EU and the globalists, when they take over a country, you suddenly get a wave of migrants, a wave of LGBTQ clubs and bathhouses that open up everywhere, and they're degenerates, really. That's why Russia has been rejecting them for decades, and that's why they're so angry with Russia, right? Why can't you just comply and open up a bunch of bathhouses? Why can't you just do it? Why can't you invite all these transgenders over for your military? How can you have a military without a trans division? Just doesn't make sense anymore, right? And the globalist agenda has failed, the wokeness has failed, but also the pandemic tyranny has failed, and they're still pushing censorship. So is it really better if Iran gets something like that, or if Iran just has this regime that sucks? Who cares? It's a third world country. As long as they don't have nukes, then it's all okay, in my book. So I don't really feel like I should be obsessing about Israel or Iran. But I do feel offended when they bombed Jerusalem. Really, F them, right? I'm not a fan of Israel, but they didn't bomb Bethlehem or Jerusalem, right? Iran is doing that. So really, F them. But if it comes to the lies and deceptions about who really tried to assassinate President Trump, that's even more offensive, especially if you just say something casually to Bret Baier and Fox News that, hey, Iran did those two things without any evidence, just stating it, just to get MAGA to turn on Iran and support regime change or a war. That is disgusting. It doesn't make Netanyahu look good, but who is this guy? You have to remember that in 2020, one of the first world leaders, I think it was the first, to congratulate Joe Biden and to say that he won before any court cases or, judges rejecting court cases more apt, right? Netanyahu was like the first to congratulate Biden. I mean, the speed at which this guy came out to say that Biden won, it was very telling, very weird, and I will not forget that. So now this guy is saying, hey, Iran did the 2 attempted assassinations and President Trump is an awesome guy. You have to remember that Netanyahu was very angry at Trump, and again, these media minions like Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, and others were attacking President Trump and the Secretary of Defense because it seemed like they wanted a peace deal, that Iran could have some kind of a peace deal. And then when there's a strike and President Trump had to go along with the refueling and some intel help, suddenly they're all talking about President Trump like he's a 4D chess player and, oh, the greatest president ever. And you even had Mark Levin saying, this is MAGA foreign policy. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, they were slamming Trump. So it's like carrots and sticks, right? So if you don't do what they want, they attack you. And if you do what they want, or you go along with it, you get the carrots, right? All the praise. So you can see how puppets like Biden, like Choco and Bogle, and even Bill Clinton and Bush, they just did whatever was told because they like the praise and they don't want to go against the grain. But President Trump is a firm leader. He's very pro-Israel. Don't forget, he's very pro-Israel. But he also uses common sense. He doesn't want regime change everywhere. He doesn't want war everywhere. So he still has that peace card that he can play. And that's appreciated. I'm in favor of not giving money to Israel or Ukraine or anyone else. But, sometimes you have to understand that that's the way the world is turning still, right? So presidents come and go. The overall strategy is to encircle Russia, also China, because you never know what kind of a leader they will have in 50 years from now or 100 years from now. So it's kind of like as a precaution, right? And in the future, the war that will be fought will not be like tanks rolling down a hill to attack a village. It'll be robots and drones and missiles and space lasers, and it'll help if you're right at the border of Russia and China. When it all goes down, you may have an advantage. So again, it's a long-term strategy. So in the meantime, the short-term strategy, it can be more neoconish, or it can be more focused on peace deals and trade, as President Trump has. It's kind of like a mix what President Trump is doing. You know, overall, the strategy stays the same, let's be honest, right? Encircling Russia and China. But President Trump is focused more on the economy, making America great again. And we have so much to fix that, you know, just a couple of years with President Trump, it's not going to help. You know, financially, we're in big trouble. Even a lot of revenue in these years, it's not going to change the overall. And when President Trump is gone, we're going to get some kind of an a-hole again, some kind of a puppet again, and everything is going to go to hell. And I know it's not an optimistic view, but that's the way it is. For the meantime, I can just tell people, stop obsessing about Israel, whether you're pro-Israel or against Israel. Stop always obsessing about Israel. Just a tiny country, nobody cares that much. But also, let's focus on putting America first, which means not obsessing about other countries so much, right? Get a grip. Obsess on the USA.